Thanks, colleagues, for coming together today. We thought we'd do something different. Rather than bring you together and in a physical location, we'd put this presentation together to give you an update of the ICT Enterprise Strategy for 2016 and a recap of 2015. Also, you'll then be able to use this presentation and share it with your leadership team as well, and also your staff. But it's very important for you to have an understanding of where we're heading in 2016, what we did in 2015 as well. We're making pretty significant inroads into upgrading the network and ensuring it aligns with where we're going from a pedagogical point of view. This presentation will only take about 30 minutes of your time, and then subsequent to that, feel free to follow up with myself or my other colleagues, which I'll share with you in the presentation. So first of all, just the agenda today is just to give you an understanding of the context of the work, particularly for the new principals to our diocese and the new staff. What does ICT look like in the context of Catholic Education Diocese of Parramatta? The second then is how we actually deliver enterprise ICT architecture. Then a recap of 2015, and there's a couple of points in there that I just want to actually follow up on, in particular in regards to the wireless upgrade and some more thinking. And then what we're doing in 2016, which is the next iteration. And there's some pretty big expenditure that I really want to make sure that we're all aware of in relation to the network. So just in regards to the context, and as we always do, we go back to providing quality Catholic schooling. And so the ICT team is very much aware that everything we do at the enterprise level comes back to an understanding of the provision of quality Catholic schooling, from leading the learning to the learning environment to learning and teaching, and obviously the community partnerships. And it's about partnerships. But all along with those partnerships, it's about Catholic education owning the intellectual property. But we engage partners to actually help us provide those services. And in the context of the provision of the ICT, it's around what we understand are the core skills that kids need to work upon as we move forward in regards to communication, collaboration, critical thinking and creativity. And they can be packaged up in various ways: project-based learning, inquiry-based learning, etc. But it's very important that the architecture allows us to deliver, or allows teachers and students to learn and deliver around those critical skills. So the technology has to be flexible, has to be efficient, has to be available all the time. As I said earlier on, it's important for us to actually own the ICT intellectual knowledge, or the knowledge around the design of the enterprise architecture. Doesn't mean to say we don't engage partners, but it's important for us to own that intellectual property. We own the connectivity models, we own the supporting platforms, or we define the supporting platforms, and we define the services. It's not up to partners to define those services. We define the services. We're the learning experts. As a Catholic education organisation, we own it, it's defined, the technology then becomes the enabler to provide those services. This slide here is pretty important because it gives you an understanding that you may not have, particularly if you're new in your roles, to the complexity and broadness of delivering the ICT enterprise services. There are 16 key architects, and they are complex. And every education system struggles with this concept and what they are. But as you can see there, we try to actually then group those within 5 areas. And these areas are then the areas that we deliver upon. And as you can see there, it's the application service architecture. The second area here is all around identity and managing identities and the information associated with identities. The third area is all around the school networks and the wide area networks, a lot of the infrastructure. The fourth area is around the monitoring and management, the content security, the security of the devices to ensure there's only the appropriate devices on the network, and that we know what's happening on the network and we can monitor and manage that network. And the fifth area there is around our whole backup and disaster recovery strategies. That for most people out there, these areas are unknown, but these areas are important at the enterprise level if we're going to deliver and have a strong and reliable enterprise ICT network. Without these areas, things will fail and they'll go very quickly back to being a cottage. But that's the complexity and the vastness of for the provision of ICT services at the enterprise level in large organisations. To do that, the way we've structured the ICT team, and again, this is important for new people to our organisation, but we really have three strands. We have the back office team, and on that we have these 5 engineers which correlate to those five areas that I just talked about. And those 5 engineers allow us to ensure that we own that intellectual knowledge, that we know what we're doing and that we work with partners to deliver what we require. And the example of those engineers are Mario, for those people who have been around for some time, Mario, Renee, Tristan, Madanko, and a new colleague, Michael. Then we have the front office team. And the front office team, their service to you is all around the front-end devices, the front office services. So when you're talking about a device not working, it's the front office services team. They're the front-facing of ICT enterprises. The back office team, you don't see them. They just make sure things are working. And then the project office team. The project office team is there to ensure the projects that we're delivering are delivering within an appropriate methodology and to budget. And that's the maturity that we are operating at and have to maintain and continue to operate at. We're talking large sums of money and we need to ensure that we get the best bang for buck, and we need to ensure that there are appropriate processes, and that's what the project management team provides, those structures and processes. They're headed up by 3 key people. The back office team is headed up by Karen Kittenoff. Karen's been around for many, many years within the diocese and is very familiar to most of you, except for the new staff, but certainly you'd know Karen Kittenoff. She heads up the back office team, so if there are servers down or the network's down, Karen's the manager that works with her team to design the architectures and deliver on those architectures. The front office team, you'd be very familiar with Linda Pearsall, runs an extremely efficient service, ICT trainees, plus is responsible for all the front office delivery of those services. And again, she has a very capable team supporting her, particularly with the DTSOs, the Diocesan Technical School Support Officers, and also the IT trainees working with you at your schools. The third area again there is headed up by Brian, and Brian again has been around for a long time, and the value of Brian is having both technical knowledge and learning knowledge, and it's why Brian has 2 roles. The first role there is as the project management office team, but also Brian is responsible for the operational management of the whole team, the whole ICT team. And so Brian heads up the ICT operations and ensures that all services and all projects are aligned and delivering on budget, and also the understanding of where to in the next iterations. Now, just quickly, I just want to quickly go through the 2015 and just give you an update. And again, particularly for the new staff and new principals, we are talking large sums of money. So in 2015, we started on 8 strategic priorities. The first one being the big fat pipes to schools, and that's just about finished. There's a few back-end technical things we're still working out with Telstra, but that's essentially around Telstra providing you with big fat pipes out of your school. And that's been a complex project, but I'm glad to say it's just about finished, and we certainly are positioned very well to not only have big fat pipes out of your school, but the capacity to increase those. There are costs associated with that. The cost of that provision in year 1 is $2.5 million. By year 3, it's going to go up to over $4 million just to provide that connectivity. That doesn't account for the download costs and other costs. That's just essentially the rental of those lines out of your school or that service. It's a significant cost. But it did give you the new school router, which actually gives us other opportunities with newer technologies, which I'll talk about. The second area there that's continuing to develop is really the integration of voice and video. And in particular, you have been using the high definition video conferencing services, and that's part of that service. That service actually is provided by Cisco, and the technology is Cisco Telepresence. And we'll continue to develop the integration of voice and video on that area. And there'll be more conversations on that as we move forward. The school server decommissioning, I'll talk about that in a moment, but certainly we are, and we do realise the school servers out there have approached their end of life, and really the delivery of those services no longer align with what we know about good learning and teaching. We need to ensure that the students and teachers have access to their resources 24/7, and having a local school server in that regards just doesn't work. So we're enhancing that service and redesigning it, taking advantage of some of the opportunities of that new school router that was put in. The fourth one there was around the enterprise wireless LAN controller. That was a device that was put into all schools. It was about $25,000 each. We didn't replace that with one at each school. We put one in centrally at our central data warehouse or data area, which is in the city, in a secure area. We have one enterprise one with a backup, and then associated with that was redesigning the wireless network and upgrading your wireless access points. I just want to take a few moments to actually talk about that particular project, the upgrade of your wireless access points. We upgraded some 2,500 access points, about $3 million. The important thing to understand there is that these new access points, the wireless access points, really will give you greater throughput. They are designed to work at 2 levels. One level allows old devices to connect to them at what's called a 2.4 gigahertz frequency or hertz frequency. But they also operate at a higher frequency, which is a 5 gigahertz frequency, which is all the new devices. We can support the old connections, but you only get a small throughput. However, we want to actually migrate all the connectivity to the higher throughput. It's a bit like understanding the difference between using a 13 millimetre water pipe and a 19 millimetre water pipe. We want to make sure all of your school devices connect on that 19 millimetre pipe, which is the 5 gigahertz range. So we'll be coming through this year and fine-tuning those connections with you. The other point there is to understand that these access points, we really suggest that there's about 20 learners, active learners, 20 to 25 active learners per access point. While on average, when we do the calculations, we do have that ratio. That's not necessarily the case in your school. You may find, and you will have, learning spaces where there could be 60 to 90 kids aggregating for learning experiences. It's important that you walk around and have a look at those spaces and then have a look at where those access points are. And if you identify that there's only one access point but there's 60 students aggregating around that learning setting, then we know they will have a poor experience. And so that's when we want to fine-tune it, and we can fine-tune it 2 ways: increasing the number of access points, or ensuring all of the students are operating at that higher frequency to ensure they have the best connectivity into that access point. So we'll keep working with you this year, and that will be coordinated really through Linda and Karen. Linda because it's a front office service, accessing the network. Karen because it's a back office service in terms of configuring the network to ensure it meets your requirements. But it's an important thing to do, and straight away you can actually ask your colleagues in your schools to walk around and do a learning audit. An audit of how learning occurs in your spaces in relation to where those wireless access points are. The sixth area there is what's called our single sign-on strategy, and that's progressing. And one of the issues there is that CEDP, ourselves, we provide services, and so when you log on to CEDP. But some other services are provided by external providers, and subsequently when you then go to another web page you have to sign on again. We're continually working with those providers to get to the stage where you only log on once. It's a very, very complex process. The reason being is that we're not in control of designing those other services and those applications, though we do recognise we want to make sure they integrate. So we're continuing with that, and every period of time we get another service on to streamline that process. But that's what that project is about, and it continues. The mobile device management. In 2014 into 2015 we transitioned to AirWatch as a particularly an Apple iPad tool, or a tool to manage Apple iPads and Apple iDevices. It costs per year about $400,000 for that license. And mind you, just on licensing there are other license costs. An example, in 2016 the Microsoft licensing cost is about $1 million. Again, these are significant costs that we want to make sure you're aware of, but they're costs associated with providing back office services and front office services. Just back to the mobile device management. We did implement AirWatch. $400,000 it costs us. With the new Microsoft licensing agreement, it comes with a mobile device management software. It's called Microsoft Intune. It's been packaged in with that license. We couldn't unpackage it. So moving into 2016 and into 2017, we'll be migrating off AirWatch and moving to Microsoft Intune. That will allow us to save about $400,000. So we don't want to go forward basically spending twice. So we will move to Microsoft Intune. It's a maturing product. We're fairly confident that it actually will provide as much plus more in that mobile device management sphere. So it'll allow us to manage more mobile devices and not just the Apple platform. The eighth project there in 2015 were security recommendations. And there's particularly information security recommendations about ensuring our servers and our services are secure, so that the information on those devices is secure. We have several recommendations, and we're continuing with those recommendations and implementing those recommendations. And some of those, for example, are ensuring that all of your devices are always utilising and using the latest operating system. As soon as your device and also servers are not using the latest operating system, it leaves those devices open for external hacks. And when there is an external hack, hackers can then navigate through to information sources and steal or use that information for inappropriate purposes. So we're implementing a couple of significant security recommendations. One is around ensuring we've got systems to make sure your devices are up to date, and the other one is around more significant auditing tools. So if there is a particular break or an attempt, we know about it, we're monitoring it, and we can capture where it's coming from. So we do have, and we continue to invest in significant auditing tools to be able to track data usage and data access throughout the diocese. Moving into 2016, in 2016, you can see in 2015 the projects that we've finished, or not finished, we've actually matured, but moving into 2016, I'll just give you some understandings. For those new to the diocese, this may be a new diagram. For those who've seen it before, it's just really gives you an update of that upgrade of the internet connections for your schools. And what you do have now coming out of your schools are two big fat pipes. One is for all your internet traffic, and some schools have up to 200 megabits per second coming out of there, which is a significant sized pipe. The hot pipe is for all internal traffic, such as the high definition video conferencing. The 200 megabit connection, all schools by the third year will have a 200 megabit per second connection, regardless of whether you're utilising it or not. It's a requirement of our contract with Telstra that we actually subscribe to that service by the end of by the beginning of year 3. And then we have connections from Telstra into CENET. I won't really go into CENET now, what it is. It's our Catholic education network across Australia, and then out to the internet. Just moving forward, and just very quickly, one of the issues with our project around that voice and video integration project was the whole idea that you still have ISDN connections and telephone leases lines into your school, and we have 200 to 300 different lines into our schools that are very hard to track. Over the last 12 months, we've been working hard with Telstra to identify those lines, and we're going to consolidate that process. Not just that process, but in 2016, we'll be actually removing those local telephone lines and putting in a single big fat telephone line in at our data centre. That will do two things. It will reduce the impact of lightning strikes at your school. Particularly when there's storms, there's a device on your school router that connects with the local telephone lines, and it usually breaks in lightning strikes. And there's even right now today, I think there's a school still down. So we'll remove that risk, and we'll put in that single connection in at our data centre, and then all phone connections will flow through our data centre via our network. And it's a voice over IP technology, the next iteration. That will allow us to consolidate all of those telephone lines and certainly reduce significant line rental. That'll happen during 2016. We don't expect it to actually have any effect on your telephone numbers, though there may be a short outage as we transition and move across. As we have done with all of our projects, we certainly let you know about that process in well in advance, so we can actually negotiate and organise an appropriate time for that. As I said, what it will do is significantly reduce costs and improve service. The third project there, which I talked about previously, was your school servers. Your school servers are old, and all the data on them can only be really reached when you're at school. We've already started using Google Drive, or most schools have started using Google Drive. This year we'll be moving all of the data off your school server up into Google Drive, and that'll happen automatically, but it means it gives you as a school an opportunity to have a look at that data, and essentially if it's irrelevant, get rid of it. If it's relevant, we continue and move it up to Google Drive. So essentially it's like having your school server in the cloud. And we have done all the testing and planning associated with that. We're doing it in a couple of schools. It will still give you the option though to have some virtual servers at your school, which again we'll be able to manage because they'll be sitting on your new school router. So if you do have some local applications that you use, such as timetabling, some other local server applications, you still will be able to run those, and we'll run them locally, or they will appear to be running locally because they'll be stored or running on our virtual servers. Again, this will give us greater ability to ensure that the servers are all up to date, greater security, but give you also greater flexibility, particularly your teachers and students with accessing their data. Moving into 2016, as you can see, we'll continue with those 8 strategic priorities from 2015. Some of them are moving to the next iteration, such as the mobile device management, which is the Microsoft Intune, continuing with the security and the single sign-on. Moving into 2016 as we are now, we have been planning this in 2015, so it's already started in actual fact, is upgrading all of your local area networks, and I'll talk about that in the next couple of slides. Significant project, I think it's around $10 million, pretty close. Continuing with our high definition video conferencing systems, etc. The other new project then is upgrading all your building fibre. We put fibre between your buildings, connecting the local network at your school in 1997. And there's about 50 kilometres of it. That all has to be replaced. To get, one, it's ageing, but to ensure you have optimal throughput of data to get out of your school. You've got really good wireless access points, but we need to upgrade the stuff in between. And so 50 kilometres of fibre. Also in your rooms, your data rooms, there are uninterrupted power supplies. Essentially they provide power to your server and services and the important bits and pieces in that room when the power goes out. They're also, they're put in 1997. They need to be replaced, so we're replacing all of those. And then library to the cloud, that's another project that just continues. It's the next iteration of library services. So really I just want to spend a few minutes on particularly strategic priority 9, which is and 10, which is upgrading your school local area networks. As I said, that's essentially what your school network looks like. You've got computers connecting to a wireless access point, and then in each building you have a building rack with these things called switches that then connect back to a main switch and then connect back to your school router, and if you've got a school server, your school server. What's important to understand is that while we've upgraded all your wireless access points and your school router, it's the stuff in between which is 6 to 7 years old that needs to be replaced. It's failing now, and ad hocly we're going out there and replacing these devices. We're now going to do it at scale starting this year. We've planned for it, we've budgeted for it, we've ordered it. It's a significant project. In our schools, these devices, there are 839 in total. That's a significant number of devices to replace, and they directly connect to your network. They are your network, your local network. There's only 68 good ones. We need to replace a lot of others. The total cost is around $7 million. We're going to roll this or do this upgrade of all of those devices, those switches. We're going to start this year. It will go into 2017. There is no way we can do this project in 1 year. We've got to make sure we work with you to ensure the timing is right. The longer we leave it, the greater risk to your school being down. Though when we do the upgrade, your school still will be down. Your school could be out, and depending on the size of your school, for a day, maybe a bit longer. But we'll have to work with you. Again, that's why we have the project office team to work with you to negotiate the time, the most optimal time. So start thinking about that with your team, about when's the appropriate time. And if I was at a school, I'd be thinking, give me a week, or a few weeks. Maybe here's a week as an option, here's another week as an option. Start thinking about those weeks where there will be network disruption. We are actually taking out all of the devices and then actually replacing them with new ones. So it's a significant logistic, technical and physical job. And as I said, it's about $7 million. There's other little bits and pieces associated with this, but one of them is not just replacing those devices, but replacing the fibre that connects those devices between buildings. And that's fibre, as it's been laid by NBN. We have to replace 50 kilometres of it, and it could be more. We estimate from our records it's about 50 kilometres, but that's about $3 million. We've already replaced 6 kilometres of it in a couple of our large secondary schools to get an understanding of how long it takes and how to do it. But we are in the process of upgrading that fibre cabling. So then at the end of the process, you'll have the latest wireless access points. You'll have the fibre that connects the wireless access points between the buildings, and you'll have new building switches. So your whole network will have been replaced within a 2.5 year period. That's from your wireless, your school servers, your fibre and your switches. Hasn't been done before, but it's something that we know we have to do to ensure your teachers and students can deliver and experience the learning and teaching that is required for today's world. So that's just a quick update for you, particularly to give you a context of the work, an understanding of the work, those 16 strategic architects, an understanding of the work in 2015 and 2016. So we will be working with you over 2016 and 17 again. Don't be afraid to contact Brian, Linda or Karen at any time to get an understanding or more information about these strategic priorities. It's important that you're engaged with it. It's important that your staff understand them. It's important to understand there will be disruptions this year. So if you can start thinking about those planned disruptions, when's the best time for your school, and maybe think about 2 or 3 options so that when we do contact you, we can work out those times. But certainly by the end of the process, you will have substantially a brand new upgraded architecture that's actually designed for today's learning. If you have any questions, you can certainly contact me, but I'll be actually off doing some other projects for Greg, particularly around a focus on the new schools within the diocese and the thinking around learning and teaching and where to next. But certainly contact Brian as Head of ICT Operations, and again Karen, back office team, Linda, front office team, and if they're just general conversations or general issues, certainly the service team. We will be also coming out and requesting to come out and bringing together the ICT people, and Brian will be giving a similar presentation to them, so there's an understanding for them. There's this video that you can share with your staff, so we're hoping that with this message the whole diocese understands the complexities and the breadth of ICT, enterprise ICT services, and what it looks like for 2016 and moving into 2017. Thank you very much for your time, and I'll see you in the future.